Alright, what's up guys? Welcome back. If you're new to the channel, this is A21 Bravo. This is my 1998 Ford Ranger. It has a 6-liter LQ4 from, this one is from a Silverado truck. VS Racing 7875 turbo, 2 Walbro 450 pumps, methanol injection, fast 86-pound injectors, blah, 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 blah. A bunch of stuff in the truck. So I kind of want to show you over the last year. That's what this video is going to be about. I've been thinking about doing this for a while, but I want to show like a 1-year progression of this truck, all the stuff that I did to it, what went well, what didn't go well, what I learned, a lot of the struggles. If you guys have been following a lot, you know there was a lot of struggles and a lot of bumps along the way, but that's just part of the game. I want to show my first pass that I did NA with this truck. Just kind of a recap, basically, of the last year. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, and I'll kind of go through the whole thing. It'll be a long but quick video. Let's just get right into it. If you guys make it to the end of the video, be sure to leave a comment and let me know you made it through the whole thing. I would appreciate that. Let's get started. All right, so we'll start out with this thing. This is way past the year that this video is about, but this is from 2008, when the truck did have Lambo doors and spinners. So I think the only thing I miss about this setup is the topper that's on the back of the truck, that bed cover. And that thing had some issues, so I had to get rid of it. But fun fact, I do still have those spinners in my basement. So if anybody's interested in a set of 22-inch spinners and you want to reminisce about your past, I got them. Still got them. But this is, kind of funny here. I bought my welder to do these doors. So the reason that I own a welder right now and I've done any welding in my life is because of this project. So it's kind of funny to look back and laugh at it now, but I probably wouldn't own a welder if I didn't do this project. So that's kind of the segue into all of the other garbage that we're going to look at. So here we go. Here is the engine. Obviously, I did an engine swap. Woohoo! This original engine was from a 2004 Chevy Express van, and the transmission, 4L80E transmission, was also from an Express van. So here we go. It's in there. I did the mounts. I basically mated the GM LQ4 transmission mounts to the factory Ranger mounts. I just welded them together, so I bolted into both spots, and everything seemed to work out just fine. 4L80 transmission, there it was going in. I did weld up that bracket that's on the top of the jack, and the red ratchet strap that's tied around the tail shaft is how I got the transmission on top of that thing. I couldn't get the truck up high enough, actually, to get the transmission underneath it while it was on top of the jack. So what I did was I slid the transmission underneath the truck, and then I used the 2x4s that are on the right side of that picture. I put them up on the jack, and then I used the ratchet strap to pull the 2x4, pull the transmission on the 2x4s up on top of the jack. So that was a disaster, and I only had to do that one time, and now I have a second jack so I can actually do that, but that's how I did it. So just talking about it. Here is the transmission crossmember mount that I built. I didn't have enough square tubing to build the crossmember to go all the way across, so I picked up some scrap pieces that I had and just welded them together all the way around, and this is still the crossmember exactly how it is right now. That's still in there a year later, and how many drag passes and wide open pulls and broken transmission, we'll get into that later. This thing is still in there. So the idea behind this, and the reason, is that I was trying to do everything as cheap as possible, because this is originally a budget build, and I did the entire swap for around $700-800. So that was pretty cheap, and that was the idea behind the whole project from the beginning, was just do everything as cheap as possible with whatever I have laying around. How can we do it cheap and basically cut every corner that we possibly can? So you can see that the crossmember is actually welded to the little pan thing that went underneath that's bolted to the frame. It's just welded right to that. So that's kind of funny. There's like this little catch tray thing that's bolted to the frame on each side, and I just welded it right to that thing. So 4L80 didn't really line up with the firewall and all that stuff to use the original dipstick, and I didn't really feel like spending $80 on a dipstick, or a flexible one. So here's what I did with that. I basically just used a tubing cutter, cut down the tube, measured the distance that it would still need to go down in the pan, cut the dipstick, and then welded the dipstick back together so it still retains all of the same dimensions in the pan. So the dots and everything still line up and the level is correct. But once I verify that the level's correct, I don't need it really anymore. You just kind of check it and it's done. So went with the stubby dipstick, locking dipstick, and that's what's in there now. It's just really kind of a pain to check it, the small number of times that you have to do it, because you got to check it while it's running, so you're underneath the truck while it's running. So I don't really like doing that, but that's what I did here. So this picture, this is a big pile of garbage, but there's a story behind this. This is all the stuff that I had sitting in my garage at the time that I got rid of the truck that this is in. So the reason I have this truck, it's a different Ford Ranger, and this is the Ford Ranger that I pulled the drive shaft out of. So this is a extended cab, I forget the year, I think it was a 2001 Ranger. I bought this truck. I got this truck from a friend. He sold it to me for $200. So I took the truck basically for the use of the drive shaft, because I was at his house. He had a gathering at his house, and I saw the truck, and I went underneath it just to measure the drive shaft because I was curious. I needed a drive shaft at the time, and I wanted to see how long it was. You know, the extended cab automatic aluminum factory drive shaft from this truck. I measured it, and it was like perfect, within an inch of what I needed. And he's like, "Oh, why don't you just take the whole truck?" I'm like, "Well, how much do you want?" He said $200. I'm like, "Okay, I'll just take it." So I took it home. I didn't even pay him that day. I mean, he just let me take the truck home, and I paid him later. But that's kind of funny story behind that one. So that's where I got the drive shaft from. So I saved a little bit on the drive shaft, and I actually made money on this deal because I sold this truck as it was, running and driving. I got it for $200, took it home, took the drive shaft out of it, and then I had the truck just sitting in the driveway and garage. I wanted to get rid of the thing, so I cleaned out my garage, all the extra junk that I had sitting in there, put it in the back of it, and then I put it on Craigslist. And then I actually had some guy come and buy it, or he traded me something, because I put a different drive shaft back in this. So I ended up finding a different drive shaft for really cheap, like $40 or something on eBay, and I put it back in this truck, and then I put it on Craigslist and I sold it. Or I traded it. A guy traded me a Marlin 3030 for this truck. I made out on this deal, and pretty sweet, funny story. So I actually profited on the drive shaft from this truck. So here's the engine in there. This is the first time I did the dual exhaust, just straight dual exhaust out without the turbo, anything like that. And then I just went back on each side to a 36-inch glass pack on each side. So this thing sounded pretty good. I like the sound of it. As I said, budget build, so I did everything myself and went with the wire harness. So this is the harness, going through the harness and stripping everything and getting everything situated for how I needed it. And I did a video on this thing too, so if you guys need any help, there's a video about that. And good experience. This was the first harness I did. I enjoy wiring typically. This isn't something that's intimidating to me. I like doing it, so this was a breeze. Here was when I was trying to incorporate everything into the factory fuse box, and I think I did a pretty decent job doing that. So here's the final result, and you just have the one big wad of wire that comes over right to the fuse box, and that's everything. So everything worked factory, used the factory fuses, it retained all of the factory gauges, everything worked. Everything worked properly. So here is the throttle cable that I did. So I just grabbed a throttle cable from the junkyard and bolted it up to the throttle pedal, and this is still what's in there now. So I just kind of notched out, I used a grinder and notched out a bolt and ran it through the throttle pedal and put a nut on it so I can actually pinch the throttle cable with that nut inside the notch in the bolt, and that's what's in there. Alright, boys and girls, so I'm on my way to the track now. Couple things I'm a little worried about is passing the safety inspection. I just don't know how that's going to go or how strict these guys are. So the track says you can rent a helmet, so hopefully there's enough that I can actually rent. pretty cool. So the time that I actually had was 15.7. I knew it was going to be slow. I didn't think it was going to be that slow. All right, so yeah, a 15.7 at 92 miles an hour. So stay tuned to the end of the video because now my 8th mile passes are faster than that first quarter mile pass. But here's the first dyno sheet that well, I guess the only one that I've ever gotten with this truck. It was 223. So I was a little bit disappointed in that, and I felt like there was maybe something wrong. So dug into it a little bit, and I actually did find something wrong. So there was a problem with my intake air temp sensor, and when I modified the plug to put the wires together, it was actually touching. So the wires are basically shorted out, causing the intake air temp sensor to read incorrectly, and it was pulling a bunch of timing. So I did see a significant gain in power when I did this. I fixed the wiring and then turned power enrichment on and figured all that stuff out after I got HP tuners.
We'll try like a 40 to 90, see what happens. I'll go 100% throttle right away.
Alright, so we got a track day in, we got a dyno pull in, and that's really all I wanted to do with the truck before putting the turbo on it. So here's a shot of the turbo setup as I was putting it all in. Intercooler in the grill, turbo just hanging. And I did go with the decapped fuel injector, so this was something that I wanted to do as part of the budget build. It didn't cost anything, but I did build this little flow rig though. This was about $40 worth of material, and using the old Ford Ranger fuel pump for this thing and a battery I had laying around. So this is pretty cool. I was able to flow test all my injectors and make sure that they were all within 3%. 6 of them were at 0%, basically exact match, and then the other 2 were what I put in the 7 and 8 cylinders. Those were 3% higher than the rest, a little bit fatter. But this, I was even more of a savings over sending them out, because you can send them out and get them flow tested for about $60 a set. But just wanted to build my own rig because it was like 40 bucks in material. And it was kind of fun to play with for a while. I flowed a bunch of stuff. And here is probably one of my favorite shots of the turbo setup. Well, I had it on there. This was the GT45 turbo. And this setup right here actually was pretty close to my best pass, so we'll get into that a little. Okay, so I got some good news. I got this map sensor in. This is the On3 Performance map sensor, 2-bar. Hopefully this is what I need to fix my problem. Guess I waited for nothing then. That's not good. Alright, so 2 weeks. New to tuning, new to the tuning software, didn't really understand that much what I was doing at the time, and I ended up deleting the mass airflow codes that needed to be enabled for speed density, for the computer to fail into speed density mode properly and run off the VE table. I needed to have those codes active, but I thought that I wasn't using a map sensor. I deleted it. And that was my issue. So I ended up fighting this thing for 2 weeks. I spent 2 weeks fighting this, had no idea what was going on, replaced the map sensor, replaced all kinds of stuff, and like tried different stuff for 2 weeks, and here was the result after I changed the codes. So I found something else. So with any luck, I'm going to get in and start this thing, and it'll actually start and stay running, and then I'll be able to go drive it. couldn't really figure out what was going on, and then I ended up doing some forum reading and about why this thing was so high, and there was a lot of reasons why this could be high, but the one that I made a connection with was that my engine codes were not completely accurate to what they should be. So if I go into the engine diagnostics tab, if we look at this file right here, so this, this file right here, this is the bad one. I have my mass air sensor codes, this 101, 102, 103, they're all on no error reported. So in order for it to be in speed density correctly, it needs to have these codes triggered, and then that will disable the math. So I think what was happening, even though I have it set up to fail in the system, it wasn't actually failing and generating the code, which was essentially still looking for a MAF signal, which is why the fueling and everything was all freaked out, and it was like needing to double the amount of fuel to run. Hello to all of you beautiful people out there. All right, guys, what's up? What's going on? So I am back with the good news and the bad news. We do this all the time. We got good news, we got bad news. And then all of a sudden it just wouldn't move at all. All right, guys, so here we have a picture of the fourth drum of the transmission, the inside of the transmission. So I ended up breaking the transmission, doing some pulls on about 8 pounds, and I don't really think I broke it here. I think the pump just actually went bad. So it was starting to whine a little bit. I heard it whining when the transmission wouldn't go into gear, and everything was going fine. I put it in park, reflashed the tune, and then put it in drive, and it just wouldn't move. So ended up getting it to move after sitting for a little bit, and eventually limped it home. But this is the first time that I ever rebuilt the transmission, and this little video clip here is the second time that I rebuilt the transmission. So I rebuilt the transmission a second time because I actually broke the entire transmission. So one of the other times I was doing a long pull, and for some reason the whole thing just exploded. The pump broke, the transmission bell housing broke, the drive shaft ripped in half, and everything was junk, except for the internal parts of the transmission. Everything was still good inside the transmission, so I just bought a different bad transmission, so that's what I'm doing in this little clip here. I'm pulling the guts out of the one with the broken bell housing and then putting it into the other one, pulling the bad parts out of the other one just so I can use the case. So I got pretty familiar during this process with the 4L80 transmission, so technically did a couple different rebuilds and swapping parts around, and that's the transmission that's still in the truck today. We build it, we break it, we fix it, we build it, we break it, we fix it. Let's keep going. Just don't want to break nothing. Listen to me, don't want to break nothing, so let's jam fucking 80 pounds of boost through the engine and just see what happens. Alright guys, well there's the hole. There's a hole right by the crank sensor. This actually, whatever this hole was from, ripped the wiring right out. Here is one of them. Found the other one in the ditch. Alright guys, so this one actually happened in between the transmission brakes. So the pump went bad, I rebuilt the transmission, and then I did this, and then I broke the transmission again after I got done rebuilding this engine. So what I did to this engine, I decided one day that I wanted to try running the wastegate with no boost reference. I wanted to see if back pressure alone would open the wastegate and just see what it did, which was clearly not a great idea. So probably around 30-ish pounds of boost. It was already at 16 pounds of boost at 50% throttle the first time I tried it, and then I just decided to go 100% throttle and just go for it. Not a good idea. 2-bar map sensor and decapped injectors, and the table wasn't tuned at all, anything above like 7 or 8 pounds at the time. So just a very foolish decision, and it was a fun like 7-8 seconds while it lasted, and I got a ride home. But I mean, as if you guys have been watching for a while, you can tell this stuff doesn't really bother me. I take a lot of it as a learning experience, test stuff out, see what happens, what works, what doesn't, and even if it's a bad idea, if it's not, I'll just try it and see what happens. So I did end up rebuilding this engine, not this engine, but I got a different one. I picked up a $200 low oil pressure LQ4 that I found on Craigslist. So rebuilt that whole thing, ended up being a bad cam bearing. That was a low oil pressure issue, and that is actually the engine that is still in the truck today that I went 11.2 with, and everything seems to be working out okay. Welcome back to another episode of Deuce Big Lifts Big Shit. My heart is pounding, my whole body's shaking.
Oh, 113. Nice pass.
Not too bad, boy. scan, everything looks okay. But you can see this white line right here. It's starting to pull timing because the intake air temp is starting to get hot. So look here, we're at like a 138 already. And if I go over a little bit, you can see it's starting to go red here. 194 by the end of the pass, 180s, 190s, that's really hot. So what I did was I cut this big old hole underneath down here. This had a plate underneath. So that's all open directly to some cold air. All right, so I got this thing in there now. I'm gonna go take it for a drive and just let it get hot and see what it does. Just kind of comes down like this, and there's quite a bit of spacing in the front, so it should be enough to kind of suck in some cooler air, I hope. If not, my other option is to kind of cut it a little bit shorter. I might actually cut it down at a 45 so it's flat facing forward, and then all this air coming in right here would just go straight into that pipe. So that's my other option there. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? As usual, we got some good news and we got some bad news. Good news is I got the slicks all mounted up, and for the bad news, long story short, it's broke again. So I got everything pulled apart, pulled both the heads off. The number 5 and the number 7 pistons broke. For the first pass, honestly, I was so nervous here that I didn't even feel like recording anything with the normal camera. So I'm just kind of getting everything set up, throw the camera in the back, get that thing out of the way, making sure my scanner is going to work, turn the fan on, get it in gear. And I didn't, up until this point, I had only gone wide open throttle on the way here for about 2 seconds, so I had no idea really what the tune was going to do. It was kind of close on that little spurt that I had, and I did turn the boost controller down 2 full turns, so I kind of was a little bit nervous here and just wanted to pay attention to the truck and make sure everything was going to be okay and hopefully not blow it up again.
That was an awesome
That
pass.
was pretty decent. 11.6, 1.8, 60 foot.
Yeah, that's not even that good of a 60
That's
foot.
that's getting pretty cool.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right. That was a lot more squirrely.
Yeah,
Top
I know.
was like, holy fuck.
I told you.
But it was like, I was like in the seat, but all over the place. So I knew it was going forward. So that's better.
Did you sit on the brake a little bit?
A little bit, but then it like lurched forward, so I just went.
Well, it lurched forward, but it stopped.
True.
So, I don't know. But
I don't know like how far it went, so I was like, I'm just gonna go, and Jason fucked up the time or whatever. But that was definitely better.
Oh, yeah.
Excited about that.
a little better burnout. I think you get that 1.660.
Yeah, I was like going, and I'm like looking for smoke. I'm like, don't see any smoke,
And
but
then
I'm
at
like,
the end, it'll start smoking.
I'm like 60 miles an hour, like,
Dude, I'm like pegged speedo.
yeah.
Yeah, like
I tried
or
stopping.
do like if you want to just be like real aggressive, you could literally just floor it, count the shifts 1, 2, 3, and lift.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of guys do it.
Tried stopping.
Yeah, I seen it leaving. It went like I heard the tires grip, and I'm like, yes.
right, guys, so after that first 11.3 pass, I kind of went into a little frenzy of trying to get the 10. So that 11.3 pass was on the GT45, old slicks, decapped injectors, no methanol, like everything was just basic budget junk. Not junk, but like just as cheap as it could be. So it went 11.3 at 120. So I started going, like, trying to figure out what I could do. I had high intake temps, so I wanted to get the temps down, so I added methanol injection, and I was having fuel pressure issues, so I got different fuel issues, so I got different injectors, and that didn't help at all. So then I thought I was having fuel delivery, fuel pressure issues, so changed the whole fuel system with the fuel rails, went to all 1/2-inch lines, and just did a whole bunch of stuff. Pretty much changed everything. Got a different turbo. That was one of the theories, that the turbo was causing the heat, and just changed a whole bunch of stuff. And at the end of the day, I ended up with a 11.2 at 120. Same mile an hour, 120. One was a 120.9, one was a 121. But I changed all that stuff and picked up a 10th. So after doing that and continuing to look into things, I started to log the torque converter slip. And if you're not new, you know this. And realizing that the torque converter was slipping almost 30% during the pass. So 20 to 30% in third gear it was slipping. So I feel like at this point the engine was making the power, and no matter what I did to it, it just wasn't gaining. Wasn't gaining mile an hour. It was a consistent 22 miles an hour on the back half, no matter what I did. So the first 11.3, I was on 10 pounds, rising to 12. And the 11.2 that I did was like 16 pounds and a bunch more timing. So I was doing the right things, I feel, to try to get it to go faster. But it took me a while to realize that the converter was really holding me back. So converter is going to be in the plans for the next setup. And honestly, I feel like it would have been almost mid-10s with a better converter. But shoulda, woulda, coulda, learned a little bit, and I think we're caught up to this point. So hopefully you guys made it this far and enjoyed the video. Got almost all of the track season into one video, so that's pretty cool. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Learned a lot along the way. I never tuned anything before this truck, so that's why I probably had some issues and took a long time to figure stuff out, because I'm trying to learn how to build it, learn how to tune it, and get it right and do it all and make it all work. So more to come. I'm definitely not done with this thing. Stick around for next time. Have a good one.